This technology has transformed everything. When you empower the kids, it allows them to see themselves in a multitude of ways that weren't there before.
Inclusion. It's a simple word, a seemingly simple action. And yet, history is littered with the scars that arise when a society struggles with what it does not understand.
You got to contextualize it. People with developmental differences are forgotten, they're isolated.
Institutions were subhuman locations where people were treated worse than animals. It was front and center, the shame, the humiliation.
For centuries, people with intellectual disabilities were excluded from our social narrative. But through the experiences of the Kennedys, that would profoundly change. The most famous American family of the 20th century was led by Joe Kennedy, a titan of business and a U.S. ambassador. His 9 children would yield war heroes, senators, an ambassador, a champion for social change, an attorney general, and a U.S. president. But they held a secret among them. Eldest daughter Rosemary was born with an intellectual disability. Younger sister Eunice would not let that stop her from forming a bond unlike any other in the family.
The relationship between my mother and Rosemary was the closest. I think she heard her mother and father over the years say to her, include Rosemary, you must include Rosemary. And I think she took that not just as an order, but as a mission.
While the siblings kept Rosemary involved in family events, their father followed the accepted practice of that time. Keep people with intellectual disabilities hidden from view. For Eunice, it was a hurtful mixed message.
My mother, in a special way, learned it from Rosemary and dedicated her life to giving Rosemary the chance in the world that she may never have had otherwise.
To change the worldview of people with intellectual disabilities, Eunice needed a vehicle.
One mother called her and said, you know, there's no camp for my child. And it was at that point that my mother hung up the phone and said, well, yes, there is. The camp's going to be at my house.
And in 1962, at her home in Maryland, Camp Shriver was born.
Her philosophy was that people with intellectual disabilities were as good at sports as anybody else. And when people said that's not true, she said, you know, I'll prove it.
She grew up in a family that loved sports, and I think she saw that through sports you can change the world.
There were 100 volunteers who would come to our house every day, and then there were 100 people with intellectual disabilities who would come.
They were playing in the backyard. They were swimming in a pool. We were running races against them. They're always part of the family.
It was clear that these camps were having an enormous positive effect. So she decided to use the Kennedy Foundation to fund other camps.
For all of the success of Camp Shriver, the public narrative of the Kennedy family continued to exclude Rosemary. So Eunice changed that with an article in the Saturday Evening Post.
On the cover of one of the most widely read magazines in America, she announces that, yes, the President of the United States has a sister he loves who has an intellectual disability. Now let's open the door. Let's all come out.
With inclusion now out in the open, camps across the country continued to flourish. Eunice and her colleagues realized they could expand this well beyond the yard or even the state. And in 1968, at Soldier Field in Chicago, Eunice inaugurated the first Special Olympics.
In ancient Rome, the gladiators went into the arena with these words on their lips: "Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt."
Rosemary Kennedy was born at a time when people with intellectual disabilities were hidden away. But a sister's love would shine a light on this social exclusion and show us all what an extraordinary place our world can be when we choose to include.